New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Oh, good morning. That seemed to be really fast that I arrived with you. So I'm just so happy to be here this Saturday morning in my neck of the woods. It's just about 8 o'clock, and I think where our host is it's 9 o'clock, and I don't know what time it is where you are, but I hope you are having a wonderful day. It's always my joy and pleasure to be a part of this network and this particular program where we are going through the Science of Mind textbook chapter by chapter. And we're on chapter 13 this week, Causes and Conditions. And, as I look at my book, I think, my goodness, someday my book is just going to be completely underlined. And, I'm seeing the things that have touched me and stood out to me in the past, and the things that, are kind of coming to me as I go over this book many, many times. And, everyone that I've talked to, they say the same thing, that there is such a wealth of material in these even very short chapters that, we can read them over and over again and still glean new insights and new illumination from whatever chapter we're engaged in. And this week we're doing causes and conditions. And I like the header at the very beginning of the chapter. It says mental practice deals only with thought. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with our thought. And, it's kind of interesting, I think, to see all of the books and articles that are being written about self-talk. And generally they focus on, people who have negative self-talk, and, all the articles that have been written about the same topic. And, that's all about thought, and really just focusing in on a certain kind of thought. So mental practice deals only with thought. So when we're aware of what we are thinking, then we can start to transform that thinking to something different that is beneficial to us. And this chapter starts out, the philosophy of spiritual mind healing is based upon the conception that we are living in a universe of intelligence, a spiritual universe, that thoughts are things, that definite states of consciousness, as they become subjective, operate through a creative field and tend to reproduce themselves in form. Okay, and how do we unpack that a little bit? So thoughts, they can become things when we're just focusing on them exclusively, right? We're not allowing thoughts just to be thoughts, that come in and go out, right? We kind of fixate on them. When we fixate on them, then they become manifest and they go into that creative field, right? Where they kind of percolate and then manifest as form. So we can think of a lot of things that might be like that, right? Um, let's think about an athlete, for example. An athlete might be thinking of, oh my gosh, I really hope I don't miss this shot, whatever that shot might be. So just that focus on the negative, right? Hoping not to miss the shot, right? And creating that sense of fear and anxiety around this thing that when one is one with the flow, it comes easily and effortlessly. But you can see that resistance that becomes built up and this thought, I hope I don't miss this shot, becoming the reality of I missed the shot. So it's that simple. It's that simple. And I can think of a lot of examples from my own life where I've been, fixated on something that I don't want, right? And have that as my focal point. And of course, what happens? That's what I get. Even though I'm saying I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, I'm fixating on the negative rather than focusing on what the outcome that I desire is. So, what we do in religious science with spiritual mind healing is that this is for uncovering those different thoughts that come up, those ideas, those states of thought that are created by us, right? They're not created by anyone else. They're created by us. It's the choices that we make. It's the certain kinds of conditioning that we've accepted as our own. I was actually reading an article this morning about a woman whose father would go into rages, and that's what she experienced as she was growing up, was these incredible rages that he would go into. And that's what she learned to do. She learned how to rage. And she found herself behaving in the same way that her father did, which scared her to death. And I think in her mind, she didn't realize that she would fall into that same pattern, but it was a conditioning that occurred in her childhood. So as soon as she could identify that conditioning and identify her behavior, she could change the thought pattern and change the behavior and find ways to make amends when that behavior got out of control as she was learning to be more skillful in living. So there's all kinds of examples in life about how these different states of thought can hinder us in life and basically make our lives miserable. And I was really feeling a lot of compassion for this woman because she would be completely out of control, and it was a terrible way for her to live, and she finally recognized it. And what we do, right, we go from those states of thought, neutralizing them, uncovering those states of thought, neutralizing them, into building the concept of our spiritual birthright. And what is our spiritual birthright? Well, is that perfection that we were created with. We are those perfect beings. And that is one of the most wonderful things that we can come to realize is that we are those perfect beings. And, I think that's hard for most of us to accept, that perfection. There's all kinds of things. Well, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? What about when I do this? What about when I do that? These are not perfect states of being. Well, no, those are the states of thought that we have allowed to cover up who we truly are. So we're in a state of remembering and uncovering and just polishing these wonderful souls that we are. And that divine presence, yes, we do believe in that divinity, the sacredness of life, that life is intelligent, that whatever we might call life, whether we call it God, the divine, the sacred, are those thousands of names for the divinity within. Whatever it is, that is who we truly are. That is our spiritual birthright. And that is the place where this activity for developing our spiritual muscles to claim our spiritual birthright come into power. So, we talk about dispelling the darkness, the thought that we have. We can have dark thoughts sometimes, and those negative thoughts are dark thoughts. And sometimes I don't even like to say negative thoughts because it kind of puts this duality out there, right? Good and bad. Well, they're just thoughts. And some are productive and generative that are benefit to us, and others are not helpful, or destructive to us. So Ernest Holmes goes on to say that light has the power to overcome darkness. And I think this is an important point. Not by combating darkness. So it's not combating, it's not in this conflict with darkness. It is just being what it is, which is light, right? Light is a reality. Light exists. Darkness exists. And they both have their place within the universe, right? And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehends it not. So this is scripture that he is using as an example of this non-combative situation between light and dark. No, light just is. Darkness just is. And yet when we shine that light, it's always there. So even when we feel like things are dark, we're having dark thoughts, that lightness is always there. We're never overcome by darkness. We're never in a completely dark state. These things exist together, and the light is always present. So the next paragraph says, this is the third paragraph on 183, therefore spiritual treatment does not concern itself with unpleasant conditions, nor with imperfect manifestations, either in one's body or in the bodies of one's affairs. Treatment is for the purpose of inducing an interior awareness, an inner realization in the mind of the practitioner pertaining to the spiritual perfection of the person for whom he is working. And I want to remind everyone that we are all practitioners of science of mind. You may not be a professional licensed practitioner, but when you practice these principles, you're a practitioner. So we can claim that title for ourselves. We are practitioners of these teachings. So we are working, right? Spiritual mind treatment is to produce that inner awareness in ourselves of the perfection of the person we are treating. So what an awesome gift it is to be able to see that perfection in another person who may come to us if you're praying with someone or doing a spiritual mind treatment with someone, usually in some sort of distress. We do get people who come in just for celebration and Thanksgiving, but generally we get people who are coming with some sort of distress. And when people are in distress, they may not be presenting their beauty channel to us, right? They're presenting that distress and discomfort and maybe anger or whatever it might be. That's what is being presented in that moment. And yet here we are able to see the inner perfection of the person with whom we're working, and that can be ourselves as well. And that negative self-talk that I started with, that is something that can oftentimes overtake one, right? And we can't see our inner beauty. We can't see the perfection that we already are because it's being covered up by these dark thoughts about ourselves. So obscuring thoughts, let's say obscuring thoughts about who we truly are. And that leads us into what is changeless reality. Now, Ernest Holmes has this next section titled Changeless Reality. And this is always comforting to me, that spirit is changeless reality. Spirit is certainty, right? We live with a lot of uncertainty in our lives, right? There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of things that change in any given day, maybe even from hour to hour or moment to moment. You may have had times in your life where it feels that precarious, that things are changing so rapidly. It might be minute to minute that you're living, right? And just trying to make it through the day. And yet, here we are with the capacity to know that spirit is changeless reality. That is the certainty that we seek, right? That's the certainty that we seek. Whatever we experience in this realm, yes, it's a part of life, it's a part of existence, and it allows us to build on our spiritual knowledge. It allows us to use our spiritual knowledge to move through whatever life presents us. And we can do that with ease. We can do it with grace. We can do it with just a sense of deep centeredness. So he goes on to say that which we call personality is the instrument through which spirit operates. But spirit can operate for the individual by operating through him. Spirit is never bound by the form it takes. It is not affected by any cause or condition. So that's a comfort, right? That's part of our makeup, right? That is our makeup. That we are spirit. We're not bound by or affected by any apparent cause or condition. And sometimes that is a difficult realization to come to, right? Because we can have discomfort in our body. We could actually have, great pain. And it's like, oh, this exists. Yes, it is real. You are feeling it. And yet there is that eternal part of yourself that is not affected by that cause or condition. Now, a Buddhist practice, which is the original science of mind, right? We've added spirit into the mix. But Buddhist practice will actually work with pain, and we get to see it just as a phenomenon, right? Uh, and I live with a certain amount of pain at my age, right? It's one of those things that we tend to maybe uh, deny, that as we age, there are certain kinds of aches and pains that occur. And sometimes I have knee pain, and it can be excruciating. I guess there's no other way of putting it. And yet, when I kind of just step back from it and begin to observe that pain and kind of get, oh, well, what is it? What is the shape of it today? What are those different parameters of it? And I can go through it, and it brings me to the realization that pain is not constant, for one thing, and it loses its power when I am able to just look at it as a phenomenon, right? Not as a reality, but a passing phenomenon. And then it goes away, and I'm off and running again. So we know that our minds have that power to move us through whatever. We're not bound by any of those limitations or conditions that we're experiencing in really only a moment, right? It's not eternal, it's only a moment. And I often I'm going to read this next paragraph to us. We are dealing with an impersonal principle. It will operate for one just as quickly as for another, because it is law. Dare to speak, and to know what you speak is the law unto the things spoken, regardless of what conditions exist. One alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. Knowing this in your thought, work in perfect peace and calm. Always expect the good. So, one alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. That's a very powerful statement. So, what this tells us is that it doesn't matter what is going on outside of us. We can form in consciousness a complete majority and neutralize whatever thoughts may be occurring. Now let's think about this a little bit. We have moved as, humanity, we've moved into a place where we have many more people who are focused on peace. Many more people. And it has a tremendous effect overall on humanity. And in those thoughts of peace, in that dwelling in peace, we are a complete majority. Doesn't matter what is going on in any other person's mind. We form that complete majority. We change the atmosphere around us. And that is how we work. That's how we work as practitioners. Always expect the good. Always expect the good. And I can just hear Ernest Holmes saying that, with just that same sense of lightness and vigor, right? Always expect the good. Have enthusiasm, and above all, have a consciousness of love, a radiant feeling flowing through your consciousness at all times. Treat yourself until you have an inner sense of unity with all good. That is, this is a simple thing, simple idea, right? Unity, unify with good, unify with the good. And yet, that is our charge, right? To do that. And that is the discipline and practice and self mastery that these teachings call us to practice, right? We practice, practice, practice so that we can move into this state very easily. Isn't it amazing that it's possible to be completely off balance, of sorts, whatever, right? And yet, when we remember and allow that expectation of good to shine through, it changes the whole game, right? It changes the whole game. Oftentimes I hear people say, oh, well, I prepare for the worst. And I expect the good and I prepare for the worst, right? And I think it's kind of funny because, well, if we expect the good, why don't we prepare for the good? Would that really change? Would that change something in our minds? Instead of making plans for failure, make plans for the success. And the success will come no matter what the outcome looks like, whatever it might look like. Our success is in it. It's still there. And we're learning, we may we may have to make adjustments, but it's part of the journey, part of the learning experience. Prepare for the good. Let's put our mind there. Let's put our mind on the good. And if the worst comes, what is in our mind is the worst, we can move through it. It's no longer the worst. It's just something that is occurring. It's a blip, right? It's not any big deal, right? It's just something that has happened. And the next section is called The Perfect Universe. Oh, maybe I should go back and say a little bit something about this thing that the impersonal principle. I think that when we hear that impersonal, we kind of think, well, then spirit doesn't care about us. It's impersonal, right? It doesn't care about us. I think that can be a one of those habitual things, right? I'm not loved. Well, in this sense, it's impersonal in that it doesn't look at one person and say, oh, I'm going to favor this one person, or I'm going to favor this group, or whatever. It is impersonal in that it is favoring everyone. It favors everyone, not just one person, not just one group, not just one nation. It favors everyone. So good is available to all. That's our birthright. So I just want to throw that in the mix because we do have these things that can become an imbalance for us. And I think this is true. This is a real truth. If the spiritual universe were not perfect, it could not exist for a single moment. And isn't that right? Just think about just everything that goes together to create everything that we see around us. Everything is dependent. There's that interdependency that we see at work all around us, and we think, my goodness, how can everything fit together so perfectly? It is perfection. From just the basic outlines of life, how everything works together for good, to promote life, to make it possible for life to exist. And then all of this manifest universe, just think of all the stars in the heavens, on that level, down to the smallest particles. How is that all held together were it not perfect? It's held perfectly together. Otherwise, it would not exist. It couldn't exist. So this is a truth that we can see all around us, happening all around us. And the only thing that keeps us from that perfection in our lives are how we think, right? We don't see the perfection, and then we think things are against us, and we are not allowing ourselves to align in the perfection that is. I'm going to read this next section on page 185, and it's the second paragraph. Let us learn to see as God must, with perfect vision. Let us seek the good and the true and believe in them with our whole heart. Even though every person we meet is filled with suffering and limitation appears at all sides, we cannot afford to believe in imperfection for a single second. To do so is to doubt God. It is to believe in a power apart from God, to believe in another creator. Let us daily say to ourselves, perfect God within me, perfect life within me, which is God, come forth into expression through me as that which I am. Lead me ever into the paths of perfection and cause me to see only the good. And the scripture that he uses is, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which in heaven is perfect. So this is about a state of being, right? A state of being in the perfection, being that perfection. And recently there was a man who who had polio as a child, and he lived his entire life in an iron lung. And so we can look at that and we can think, oh my goodness, how can that be perfect? That man lived to be a very elderly man. During that time, he studied, he affected so many people's lives. He lived a perfect life within this body that had physical limitations. And he did incredible good in the world. And the resiliency of his spirit reflected that perfection of God. And I can only think that he let the perfection of God manifest in him and be, outpicture as the life that he lived. And he was at peace. He lived a wonderful life. And, from the outside looking in, I think we could have all kinds of, pity, thinking, well, this poor man, he can't have a life. Well, he did. He did have a life. He had a perfect life, and he lived it to the fullest. So I love that section. So I hope that you will underline it like I have several times, and I've got stars all over it. Just knowing that that perfection of God is within me. It is. That's who I am. That's who I am. And I know that's who you are too. So Ernest Holmes goes on to say in page 186, turn entirely away from the condition. Disease and limitation are neither person, place, nor thing. Turn entirely from the condition or limited situation to its opposite, to the realization of health, happiness, and harmony. And the example I gave you of the man in the iron lung is the perfect example. That man turned completely away from the condition of being in the iron lung. He didn't deny that he was in an iron lung, but the condition and the limitations that could have been placed on him by his own mind didn't exist. And he was able to live this incredible life and do all these wonderful things that people thought were impossible. But we know with God, all things are possible, right? We know that. We know that. So we turn away from the condition and we turn toward health. We turn toward happiness. We turn toward harmony. So no matter what the condition might be, yeah, we can look at it, just as I talked about, working with pain. Yeah, examine it, be curious about it, but it's not something to dwell on and beat your chest about. Oh my gosh, I'm in excruciating pain, and what am I going to do, and all of that. It is a turning away when you detach from it, when you see it just as a phenomenon that's occurring in a moment, and just get curious about it. What does it feel like? What does it look like? How does it, where does it go? What are the outlines of it? All of that. And then it's gone. It's gone. It's not focusing on it. It's turning away from what our minds think about pain, right? I suppose, when I'm in pain, sometimes I'll think, oh, it seems like the end of the world, right? But it has its place and it has its time, and its time is very short-lived. And I have talked about this earlier. He goes on to say, look only at what you want, right? Never look at that which you do not wish to experience, okay? And I think I have this tendency sometimes, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that, right? Instead of turning toward, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that, right? And that can show up in any number of ways, right? As that's the resistance that we have to life, right? We're resisting life when we're saying, I don't want this, I don't want that. Well, we're resisting life because we can't say what it is that we do want. Do we know what we want? Do we know what we want? And generally that is very simple, basic things that everyone wants, right? We want health, we want happiness, we want harmony, right? That's easy. That's easy. So turn toward that. Don't dwell on, I don't want this, I don't want that. Turn toward the health, happiness, and harmony, and whatever else you want to experience in your life, the abundance of life. Right now I'm just in heaven as I walk in the morning, and I'm just in heaven because the abundance of life is apparent right now, right? It's everywhere. You see everything blooming. I've seen little baby squirrels learning how to, getting out of their nests and going all around. And, it is just heartwarming, just to see that abundance of life. All the little bunny rabbits out in the yard just running all through and, having a great time. And, it's amazing, just to see that abundance of life just all around me. And that is the perfection that God is. And we always have to know that in the middle of that is God, right? God is there. God is right there. And it is just awesome. And then the next thing that he goes into, and I'm going to finish up now, never limit your view of life by any past experience. And, I think that is one of the hardest things that many people have to learn, because this one thing happened does not mean that that's going to happen all the time. That's one experience. It may have lasted a long time. Your childhood may have had terrible things in it. For example, you may have gone through an awful divorce, for example, but that doesn't mean that every relationship that you enter into will be a bad one, right? No, not at all. Not at all. We turn away from that. We turn toward what we want. We say what it is that we want. And we attract that into our lives because we know what we want. We're standing strong and steadfast in what that is that we desire. Do we want to fall into those things that we say we don't want? When we say we don't want them, we're actually emphasizing that and calling that into us. And we have that divine imagination to work with, to see something different. And I've already talked about this too. He goes on to say it's not a question of failing or succeeding. It is simply a question of sticking to an idea until it becomes a tangible reality. So we just look at those things that we want to appear in our lives until they do, right? And that happens. There's all kinds of things. We can talk about all different kinds of things that we all have to work on together as a society, right? To make things accessible and available to all. And we all do our part to see what we want. When we have a whole citizenry, a whole group of people who know that they want peace and prosperity and they want to see abundance, they want to go to the good, that's what you create in your society, right? It goes all over. It doesn't just stay located in one place. it becomes the reality of the society. And we don't dwell on those limitations. We don't limit our view of life. We look to divine imagination, which is our gift and our superpower, really. We have that superpower to imagine all kinds of things. You know, what am I imagining right now? I wonder. I'm just imagining freedom for myself. Freedom. Financial freedom. Freedom to go where I want to go. Freedom to be who I am. Just freedom. And I can imagine it and I can name what freedom looks like. And then I put my mind there and focus on freedom. And he goes on to say, Jesus said, we judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment, remembering that things which are seen are not made of things which do appear. If I repeat, we can judge in this manner. Out of any chaos, we can produce harmony. And I think we come to that. We can come to that realization that all there really is God, or all there really is good. Doesn't matter what those outer appearances are. We have the power to go within, to access that good, to outpicture that good in our lives and for our whole community, our whole country, our entire planet. That's the potentiality that we have and that we can harness for good. So when we know this truth, there's freedom in knowing that truth. That's freedom. Truth is freedom. So as we go through this week, I hope that you'll think about those things that you want, you really desire. The simple things, right? Even to see God in your morning walk, or see God in your children, or see God in the person that you have wanted to turn away from. Just to look at them and see God. That is the power of spiritual mind treatment. And we live in this conditioned universe, right? This world that's conditioned by all these experiences that humanity has had. And yet we have this tremendous superpower of imagination, and we have God as our source. Have a wonderful week. And next week, we will be going over physical perfection, chapter 14. And as always, we donate to this wonderful New Thought Media Network so that we can have shows like this and all the other things that come through. Prayer. I mean, just look at the programming. There is so much available every day, and I hope you will take advantage of it and come here for your inspiration and community.